All right, so it's the Jere Metcalf podcast. Today we've got Robert Bairstow, who works with me in Atlanta, Georgia. He's been in the business barely a year and already does $1 million and multi-million-dollar transactions. So really excited to have you with us today, Robert, to talk about what you're doing and what we're doing and how you're so successful in the business so quickly. Robert, fill in the blanks a little bit there and just tell us about yourself and how you got in the business, and give us a little bit of your story of breaking into this business so quickly.
Absolutely. Jere, thank you for the wonderful introduction. That's more than gracious. So basically, when I got started after college in my career experience, I started off in a sales role as an inside sales role through a company called Whitehead Associates. And there I really found a love for sales. But I did want to be more face-to-face interaction with the actual customer. So I gained a great relationship with people over the phone who I'd never even met, and kind of went from there and just forming relationships. I knew that that was something I wanted to do moving forward in my career. Also, was really trying to focus on a product line that I would enjoy selling. And I was born and raised here in Atlanta, grew up all in the two areas that, really three areas that Jere and I cover the most, which is Buckhead, Brookhaven, and Morningside. And took it from there. And it just so happened my last job was a block away from the Georgia Institute of Real Estate. So I would take night classes there, and came through after about, I think, 3 months there, and got my license. And before I even got my license affiliated with the brokerage firm, I had a listing. So I had to hurry up and do that quick. And it's just kind of snowballed into what it is today, and I really enjoy every day. And every day is different. The experience is phenomenal. The people are just what make this so rewarding.
So everybody listening to this probably wants to know, including me, how did you get a listing before you even were signed up with the brokerage?
So I rented a house with a couple guys, and we were planning on renewing the contract actually, and they reached out to us, and we countered back with an offer, said, hey, we'd like to still stay here and pay the same price. And they said that they had no intention of relisting with us, that they were going to sell the house. It was an investment property for them. So we talked a little bit more, and I told them I had my license, which I did, and I told them that I would be honored to represent them.
That's great. So did you have to interview, or I think they just knew you well enough and they were familiar with you enough that they hired you, or how did that go down?
I did. I had a very intense interviewing process, and I actually competed with probably the top agent in the area at the time. And I shined, I guess.
So,
I don't know.
I was going to say, did you find out what made you shine? That's a great story, because you competed with the best of the best, and you still got the business. What do you think it was that put you over the top? Because you and I have worked together, but I always say, when you're competing with somebody who appears to be a mega agent with a big name, often you have the advantage, but you don't realize it. Otherwise, they're only interviewing the big names as a default mechanism as well. It's hard to go wrong this way, but I'd really like to get somebody specifically for me, which is why they would interview, someone that isn't that big name yet, like yourself. But what do you think it was? I know you well. I can see how you would have listened to them and really figured out what it was that they needed and been able to establish how you provide that for them. But elaborate on that. Was that a little bit of it, or am I off on that? And what was it?
No, yeah. So just to elaborate on that, I was very upfront with them about how this, I was new to real estate, and this was, one of my first deals. But at the same time, I mentioned the fact that I had so much value in project management skills. The house did need some work, so we did about $15,000 worth of work to maximize the profits for them. So the other realtor quoted the house. She thought that it could list for $479,000, and felt that we could get $625 for it with a little bit of work. So after it was all said and done, the house closed at $612,500. So
that's huge. That's a huge success story just to start.
Yeah, just a small investment in the home really made a significant change in the long run. So.
Mm-hmm. And you were able, even being a brand new agent, you were able to establish that and know that. And that comes from us all remembering that even whether it's you're getting in the business or even when you've been in the business, remembering our strengths don't just come from our experience in the business, but our life experience outside of that, which is
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's an area I grew up in. I knew the area well. I've tracked it in the past. And, I told him straight up, I said, if you were listing this house for 479, I would buy it from you. So I felt we could get it much higher. And
that's huge. And I think a lot of agents get criticized for listing houses and saying, inflating prices, and you were able to establish that's not what you were doing and own up to it and close on that. And that's huge. And I'm sure that was a great way to kick off your business. And you've been in the business how many months now? I mean, a little over a year, is it?
So I'm a little over a year and a half, I'd say.
Okay.
I haven't counted exactly, but I believe it was the end of August 2015.
Okay, and I think right now, how many million? You have about $5 million under contract, is it? And that's just so far in 2017, a couple of months into the year.
I've got a little over $7 million under contract right now, and I've closed about, I think, just shy of $4 million. So
that's huge.
Or by the end of March, I'll have all pending offers closed. So
okay, great. So kicking off a great year for our team, and I've got a lot of thoughts on this, but I want you to answer these questions on what is your greatest success so far, and what are you most proud of so far in being a real estate agent in your first year and a half of being in the business? You've had so many. I mean, that one story alone it's not a huge price point, but it's a huge success.
Oh, definitely. And I mean, I don't know if I would put it as far as like success as a price value, but more so that I just felt like I found a really good niche here at Atlanta Fine Homes, and especially with you, Jere. I think we really have something special going on. I think that's probably above all the success. The clients are amazing, the price points are amazing, but I mean, above all, it's really who you're dealing with, where you're dealing with it on a daily basis, and I couldn't be happier where I am now, and I think that's a success.
Well, I love that you say that, because I think so much is in Isaac and Whitney, who work with our media company or head our media company that help us with so much of our marketing. We were talking about that, about this money. I mean, this business does pay well, but at some point, what's the money worth if you're not around good people and you're not enjoying who you're working with, and you're not just our clients that are so great, but also our team and the people that we're aligning ourselves with. And what is do you have any one source of business, or what would you say is your best source of business or best lead generator in developing all this business so quickly?
I would say that just getting people out there knowing that you're in the business. And I've had referrals come from some sources that I never would have expected a million years to come from. And, some of my best friends haven't referred me. So, it's a matter of where you are. And I think as many people in your sphere that know that you're in the business and you're actively working and you're actively doing deals and making stuff happen for clients, the more people that can see that, then the more it kind of speaks for itself.
Well, it's like that saying, it's a kind of a cliche saying in our business, but don't be a secret agent. Don't be afraid to let people know. And do you have any examples, especially, I mean, for me, I've been doing this for 13 or 14 years. Of course, I'm going to stop keeping count soon, but it's a habit. So I'd love to hear from you as somebody for me, I find myself introduced, I subconsciously fit it into every conversation I have. And for you, you're newer in the business. How have you been so successful or a lot of this comes naturally to you, but you are very smart and you have a very natural way with people. Even when you're selling, you position yourself very well that people don't feel that way. Or what are some examples that you could give us of how you figured out how to, I'm taking a long time to ask this, but I want to make the point that I find a lot of people who are new in the business don't know how to put it out that they're an agent without feeling awkward or without feeling like they're imposing upon people that they have to get a referral. And you've obviously are very good at getting the word out on that. What are a few examples of how you've done that?
Sure. Well, for starters, I think the company resources that we have here at Atlanta Fine Homes, the resort emails, the marketing we use for all sorts of, just excellent marketing pieces. Facebook's only something I really started doing about a year ago. And I created a page, and I think it was like, 1 a.m. when I had it all done and, how I wanted it. And then I sent out an invite to everybody. But it was at 1 a.m. and, by the time somebody sees it, maybe noon the next day, it's kind of already down in their feed. So I didn't get a lot of likes at first. So I've really been trying to amp up my likes there on my page, where I've gotten it to a point where I'm very happy with it, and people are seeing it, and it's worth the money to pay to advertise on it. So,
and also, well, go ahead. No, what were you going to say? Oh, and also, like, when you meet people one-on-one, and I know we've all heard about certain training programs where there's by the way, we're never too busy for your referrals. What is your way? Because that's become kind of we can't do that anymore because everybody does it, and when you're dealing with people, you're a 27-year-old selling houses for millions of dollars already. You got to be a little more sophisticated with it than that. So give us some examples, and some of this may come to you too naturally, but to give us some examples, being newer, you probably could think of some of how you've been able to do that.
Sure. Well, I can't give away all my secrets, but I do.
Oh, now we see.
No, my sales approach probably isn't salesy.
Exactly.
I try to be very genuine with all my clients, my friends, my family. Anybody that I interact with, I really like to spend a lot of one-on-one time with people. And I think above all of that, people appreciate that. And no matter who you're talking to, whether it's a longtime friend or somebody you just met, it's going to come up what you do. So, I tell them a little bit about what I do and how I've helped people. And, chances are I know somebody through somebody that they know about, looking for houses and that sort of thing. And typically, I don't push it, but a lot of times they'll say, well, hey, I'm really impressed with what you're saying here. Let me give you this contact. So-and-so is looking for a house, or, my aunt's looking for a house. And, they don't all develop, but, I typically send them a note afterwards, and just a $5 Starbucks card saying, get your next coffee on me. I appreciate you thinking about me. So
exactly. Well, there's two things. Well, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I just think as genuine as you can be, and I just try to be very, come across as very trustworthy, and just somebody that's willing to do the hard work for you.
Well, I think what I hear you saying, if I were going to sit down and write a blog on what we just said, was there's three things. There's competence, and then there's authenticity, and there's consistency and follow through. You've got to be competent. You're good at what you do, and you stay good. You stay on the market. You're authentic with everybody that you work with, so everyone knows you've got someone competent who's going to be authentic that they can then trust, and then you're consistent in your follow through. I mean, we get so many leads, and you get a lead and you follow through, and you're consistent, authentic, and competent in doing that. So I think that's huge. And the fact in that is it's our business is such a simple business. We've got to just show up and deliver on it and offer that value. Go ahead. What do you say?
I mean, people have a large amount of people to pick from in this business, and they go with the one that is going to work the hardest for them.
And spend that. Well, and you said something else. Spend the time. I think there's two different. I feel like in our industry, there's almost two different ways to do business. There's kind of which there's nothing wrong with either one. So I don't want to come across the wrong way in saying this, but there is more of the streamlined, lower price point. You fit them through a system and a streamline, and it's kind of like McDonald's has a streamline, and it's the same exact thing every time, and you know what you're going to experience. But then there's the other end of that, where it's the more Ritz-Carlton, where as you get in higher price points, which is what you've automatically attracted in this business in your first year and a half. But that is what you're saying. It's the authenticity. It's the time that you're spending with them, and a deeper level of competence that you've got in those price points that those clients need. And they also need your time, which you're able to provide more of than the agents who are your competition, who've been in the business so much longer. So I think that's huge. And my next question, I don't ask this often, but I'm feeling very compelled to ask you, is what does the company and the broker you matter? I'm going to read what I've written down here because I've got some notes I go off of. But does the company and broker you work with matter, and why, and how important is it?
I think it's very important, and I know that they would be pleased for me to say that, but I really do think it is important. There's been, I could at least count on two hands the amount of deals or the amount of referrals that have come through where the sole reason I'm really a contender is because I'm with Atlanta Fine Homes, Sotheby's. I mean, say if I was an agent on my own with my own brokerage, starting a year and a half and some change in the business, having my own name on my own brokerage, probably not going to get a lot of business, but there really is a substantial power behind this brand. And we're about to celebrate 10 years here in Atlanta. The company itself has been around forever, but we really have a strong presence here. Small group of agents, but all very productive and very much in the know. Mm-hmm. It's a great.
Well, I think we have almost twice the level of productivity on average per agent than the next most high producing company in Atlanta does. So that's pretty huge. And of course, I agree with you. But I love your answer to that. I think that's always a good insight, especially for somebody that's newer in the business, that you're coming in the business and what your perspective and what your experience has been and you just chose Sotheby's so recently. And coming into the business, I think a lot of real estate agents come in this business. A lot of people, I hear people tell me, I love to look at houses, so I want to be a real estate agent. That might be my favorite. So, of course, we all know there's a big aha coming for them if they ever get into the business. But go ahead.
Or they say, I want to create my own hours.
Yeah, which then you find out it's every hour and every day.
But it's which 12 hours you're going to work.
Right, or which 24, all 24. Because if you're not doing it, it's all the time. So you got to love it. But when you came in this business, what was your biggest, what was your biggest aha? Like, what was you come in, you have an idea about how this business works, and you get in it and you're like, oh, that's not what I expected. What would be your biggest? And maybe I say an aha, not just an unexpected, but an aha, and as then something you figured out about the business to also make you successful.
Sure. Well, I'll set the background a little bit because I was trying to be very thorough when I entered the business, and I knew roughly about 12 to 15 people that were in the business or had connections to the business, and I took every one of them out to breakfast or lunch before I even interviewed.
Which is great advice too. That was really smart.
Which I think, anybody in our position, being a real estate agent, would be more than happy to sit with somebody and educate them on the process. And now I'm sitting on the other side of it, and I feel very fortunate because I can be very direct and not sugarcoat things for them, mm-hmm. because I feel like that helped me so much. Mm-hmm. But that being said, I think the biggest surprise, which probably shouldn't have been a surprise looking back on it, but I didn't really understand the whole aspect that I was, I knew I was affiliated with a firm. I was quote unquote working with a firm, but I really didn't understand that I was starting my own business. And I think that's been the biggest surprise. It's been a very pleasant surprise because mm-hmm. You're making your own brand for yourself. You are your own boss, and I think that's a huge perk. But it's something that just I was kind of in the distance. I was focused on other things when I was first starting, and I didn't realize that. So, but that's been a very pleasant surprise. I've kind of taken that and run with it, and it's been a fun ride for sure.
Oh, that's great.
All right, everybody, we're here today with Jack Cotton in Cape Cod. Excited to have him here. Well known for being a luxury expert and author of actually 4 books, but 3 specializing in luxury real estate, and the 4th on the, what is it about the dogs?
The Dog's Guide to Life.
Yes. So let's start off. Tell us a little bit about the books that you've written. This is Jack Cotton for a second time, everybody. We did an audio interview and decided it'd be a good idea to have you come back and
I was in the neighborhood, so why not?
Right. Fortunate enough that you're here in Atlanta, so we're getting together and going to do an interview in person and learn a little bit more about this. Everybody was so excited to hear you the first time. And we are going to focus today more on the expertise and really pinpointing what you need to be an expert in and specializing in luxury real estate and transition into what we need to talk about in the listing presentation. But let's start. Tell us a little bit about the books you've written.
Well, the main book I've written is called Selling Luxury Homes. And it's really everything from A to Z that an agent needs to know, understand, and implement to become an expert in luxury real estate, to become a trusted advisor. You don't want to become just a realtor. You don't want to be just an agent. You want to be their trusted advisor. People in the high end have medical experts, they have legal experts, they have tax experts. They want to know they're dealing with a real estate expert. So that's what you want to be seen as by them. So you want to become a trusted advisor. You're the person they call when they have a question that has anything to do with real estate. You're there for them. So that's really, I think, what sets it apart. And that's what my book does. It teaches you how to become that trusted advisor to the high net worth people in your marketplace.
I think that's so great too, because so much of the training that we get in real estate is about how to get a lead or how to win a deal.
Close that sale.
Close that deal, right. And not that long term. What is it that we really do in value? Present the value.
It's all about value in the high end. People want value. You know, the conception or perception of the public of us is that we're toll takers on the Get Your Home Sold highway. And the higher you go in price range, the higher the commissions are, the less those people are willing to pay a toll to get their home sold. They want to know that you are adding value, and you need to be able to demonstrate how you're adding that value and how you're not a cost, but you're a value added, not a toll taker.
Exactly. And that completely diverts from negotiating commissions when you're hiring an expert. We don't negotiate the cost of a surgery with our heart surgeon.
No. Joe's discount heart surgery, I don't think so. No.
Exactly.
Right.
So going into that, we're going to talk about, we've kind of hit before we interviewed, but what we really need to focus on being experts in.
Right. Well, first of all, as I said before, people in the high end, the higher you go in price, the more people want to deal with an expert. They brag about their experts. When they're at a cocktail party, oh, the guy who fixed my elbow, he fixes the elbows for the Atlanta Falcons, or my tax expert, whatever. They always want to brag about their expert. So you want to make sure that you are brag worthy. So there's 5 areas of expertise that you need to excel in to be successful in luxury real estate, to become the trusted advisor to the high net worth people in your marketplace. The 5 areas are, number 1, markets and value. You need to become an expert in markets and value. What are things selling for in your market? What are they selling for per square foot, per front foot, per acre? What are the benchmarks in your marketplace? Are things selling for 100% of this price? What is the absorption rate? What are they selling for as a percentage of property tax assessment? What are they selling for as a percentage of their zestimate, for example? You want to really understand markets and value in whatever geographic area you are going to specialize in, because that expertise is critical, and you can market that expertise, which I'll mention in a while. So the next area of expertise, number 2, is pricing. So you have the expertise of markets and value. Now you have to apply that to a specific property. So I love watching. I don't want to make anybody angry, but I watch those shows on TV, $1 Million Agent.
I don't even watch it.
I watch it because I don't watch it all the time. I don't watch it sometimes. It's very entertaining. But what kills me is that they walk into a house and they look around like this. Their hands are empty. They have no pen. They have no paper. And they look around the house, and then the seller says, well, what should I put on the market for? And they say, $12.5 million. I mean, I can't get away with that. I have to have expertise.
I'm going to have to check that out and see how they do that.
And it's every time. So my sellers tend to be way more demanding than that. I mean, I deal with a lot of Fortune 500 CEOs and people who have made their own money. And people who could afford a multi-million-dollar house, for the most part, didn't get that money by being stupid or being pushovers or falling off the turnip truck, as they say. Mm-hmm. So you need to convey expertise in how you come up with a price. How do you apply the expertise you have in the first area, markets and value? How do you apply that to a specific property? Do you spin a dial? Do you pull a number out of the hat? Do you ask what the competition said and raise it by 30%? I mean, those are all things that people do, not things I suggest you do, but have a process, become an expert in how you price. I'll talk about that more in the listing presentations. Number 3 area of expertise is what I call market preparation. Like if you look at my little Jack's dictionary under market preparation, you'll see some people call it staging. I really don't like the word staging because, again, the higher you go in price, the more people don't like to be played or manipulated. And if you look up the definition of staging in the dictionary, it's not real. It's a stage. I'm not saying you shouldn't furnish your room if it needs to be furnished or you shouldn't paint it, but market preparation, if I'm competing with you for a listing in Atlanta and you tell them what a great stager you have, well, I know Jerry's there. I know that stager she has. I have to get a better one. And so I go in and tell them how great my stager is compared to your stager. Then you find out about that. And you've got to get another better stager.
It's the competition of the stagers.
Yeah, then I have to call Martha Stewart, and then my whole commission is gone. So here's what you cannot compete with me, and I cannot compete with you. And that's market preparation. It's a checklist. It's a guideline. It's a protocol based upon your years of experience watching buyers go through the house and notice what makes their eyes light up and what makes their eyes glaze over. Sorry. So in my case, I have a 52-page checklist, which is based on my years of experience. Now, if you're new to the business, you can talk about your collective experience in your office or your team. But I talk about this took 4 decades plus to create this checklist of what makes the eyes of buyers light up when they walk into a house. Like vacuuming your pipes. Little things like that. Because people judge what they can't see or what they can see. If you have clean pipes, they assume that everything behind the walls is good also. So room by room by room, I've created this market preparation checklist that conveys me as a market preparation specialist. You don't need a stager. You need someone who can show you how to make your house look loved, because guess what? If it doesn't look like you love your house, a buyer's not likely to fall in love with it either. So it's all geared around that. And it reflects you. And when you convey that to a seller, they buy into you. You're the expert. I don't want to have to bring in other experts. I'm the expert. So then we have markets and value, pricing, market preparation. What's the next one? The next one is marketing. How do we expose your property to the market? What is your expertise in marketing? What do you do to get the most amount of buyers to see the property? It happens all the time in the high end where you go to list a house and they always say, oh, well, I had a party last summer and Sally Smith said, if you ever put this house on the market to let me know, or the neighbor wants to buy it. I mean, they always want to talk to the one person who wants it. Well, that's like if this table here was the whole market for this house, why are you going to limit it to the area of this one piece of paper by letting that one person see it? Here's my market plan, my market strategy, my market presence that allows me to create almost like an auction atmosphere, because people at the high end won't act aggressively and they won't act forcefully unless they feel a sense of competition and urgency that comes from that feeling of competition from the whole market. So you need to have expertise in marketing. And the last area of expertise, number 5, is negotiation. You've got to be seen as an expert in negotiation. I don't care how expensive the homes are you sell. I mean, where I work in Cape Cod, they're not super expensive like other parts of the country. For us, like $5 or $10 million is a big deal. Mm-hmm. My biggest deal was like a little bit more than 19 million. Well, guess what? Both the buyer and the seller of the $19 million house, which is a really big deal to me, are typically, routinely, all the time doing deals on the hundreds of millions of dollars, if not the billions of dollars. So no matter what my experience is, no matter how long I've been at this, no matter how big the house price is, I feel outgunned, because to them, it's peanuts. To me, it's the biggest deal that's ever occurred on Cape Cod. To them, it's like, yeah, it's one of my 5 houses, time to get rid of it. And the buyer's like, yeah, whatever, I'm putting together a whole bunch of stuff, and this is like one little thing. So you have to equalize a playing field between yourself and them.
Exactly. Well, when they're hiring, once you go into negotiations, the emotions get involved, and it does become a big deal. Like the big deals they negotiate. Yeah. Which will be more important in that, whether it's in your listing presentation or them understanding your expertise, that they really trust that you're doing and you know how to negotiate.
And you have to understand also that, I deal with a lot of high-end people, and they're funny. They have a lot of them have hobbies and avocations. Like in my market, they like to play golf, or they like to go fishing, or maybe they play tennis. Mm-hmm. But you know what? There's a bunch of them. They just like to do deals and grind realtors. That's their sport. That's their fun. That's their hobby.
So that's where you learned all of this from,
right.
Those guys.
It's from being ground up by these people. And so you really have to be seen as an expert in negotiation. There's 3 critical lessons I've learned.
We definitely went through those.
Because here's what I did.
Yeah.
Here's what I did. I learned this by making a complete fool of myself. There's a great book on negotiating called Getting to Yes.
Yes.
You read that book?
I have.
Yeah.
I'm in that book actually because you recommended it.
Yeah. Anyway, Getting to Yes was written by Dr. Roger Fisher, who's passed away, law professor at Harvard University. He's a great negotiator. He negotiated the nuclear arms treaties between our country and the Russians, among many, many other things. And he wrote this book. And I liked the book so much that I took a class from him at Harvard at summer school. It was 250 lawyers and me. And on the first day of class, he said, he held a first edition copy of this book, and he said, I need somebody to negotiate with me to get a signed copy of this book on the last day of class. My hand went up first. And so every day before we broke up into groups, I negotiated with Dr. Fisher one-on-one in front of 250 lawyers from around the world and made a complete, total, abject fool of myself.
Talk about a good way to learn.
Oh, I know. And luckily I didn't know these people. And I'm sure I've never forgotten.
It wasn't recorded?
No.
Maybe in your mind. But.
I hope not. Anyway, the three things I learned are, number one, you've got to have standing. Standing is what's your perceived preeminence in the marketplace. I mean, if you're dealing with a Fortune 500 CEO and then it's like this little realtor from Cape Cod, I mean, you got to equalize the playing field with standing. Yes. The way you equalize the playing field is through standing is to have experience, to have market knowledge, to have data, to really understand that person's motivation, to find out everything you can about them and why they would want this property. And the secret bullet is, or the magic bullet, no, the silver bullet. That's the right bullet, right? The silver bullet.
I think it's the silver bullet.
Is it the silver bullet? Yeah.
It's
the magic bullet.
What you mean? Yeah.
Is competition, because they think they're the only one who can buy this house. So you need to, like we had a seller one time, and he's like, okay, we want you to sell our house, and I want to exclude my next door neighbor because he's expressed interest in buying it. And I said, well, we don't do exclusions, so you can either have me sell it to him, or if you want, you can take a couple months and try to sell it to him yourself. I can call me if I can help you, but I don't do exclusions. So he said, well, I'll call you back in a couple months if I don't sell it. So a couple months later, 4 months later, I'd forgotten about it. He called back to say, I'm done. I've been trying. He offered me $4.5 million, and I don't think that's enough for my house. I said, I agree. So I listed the house, and 6 days later, sold it to the same neighbor for $6.5 million. Now, it's not because
$2 million.
Yeah, $2 million more. Was that worth? I can't talk commission, but figure any commission you want.
That was worth the commission.
I don't know how many people think they're saving commission by doing this and leaving $2 million on the table. He was smart and didn't do that. Anyway, now I can say it's because I'm great and wonderful and all that stuff, but truth be told, it was because of the sense of competition. When his daughter looked out the window and saw me showing the house to other people, she called Dad and said, they're showing the house to other people. Now there was urgency. Now there's a sense of competition. That's how you build standing. That's my first rule of negotiation, build standing. Expertise, knowing what they want, and creating an aura of competition for the property and a sense of urgency is how you build standing. Number two, never, ever, ever assume, and break this rule all the time. When you assume that the other person wants what you would want, that's a recipe for disaster. So make sure you know what they want. Negotiating is not listening to what they say, it's really understanding what they really, really want.
And sometimes it's the one they don't say.
Exactly. It used to be a game show. You're too young. But there was a game show called You Don't Say. And it's exactly right. It's what they don't say. So don't assume. I can tell you how many times sellers have, for instance, they'll sell their home for $1 million less to a person who's not going to tear it down, for example. I mean, money's not the most important thing. My assumption would be they want the highest price. It's not. So don't assume. And that was a mistake I made with Dr. Fisher. I assumed what he would want for his book was one thing, and as I pursued that avenue, I was just slapped down, kicked to the curb, stomped on, and just looked like a total idiot. So never, ever, ever assume.
What's an example of learning that way? Or do you have a good story in a negotiation with him to put another way of put into perspective for us?
I could, but it's going to make me sound so bad.
We don't want to do that.
Well, because
but we all, as real estate agents, listeners, we all know we've done it ourselves.
I know, what a dummy to go into this thing at Harvard University, at Harvard Law School, And like all these other teachers there are people you see on TV, like Alan Dershowitz and Harvey. They're all dead now, except for Dershowitz. But and I'm like making this fool out of myself, thinking that this guy's going to want money for his book. And that's what he did. I assumed, well, I'll start with money. He didn't want money. He wanted something more than money. Anyway.
Well, I think that's important in negotiating when you're getting a listing
Don't
as well. Everything we do, so much of it is negotiating. When you're hiring an agent, I don't want to switch topics too much, but for me, it's been a great example because I've broken into the luxury real estate. Early in my career, you assume they just want the hot shot.
Right.
And the thing that's important to remember is if you're in the room and they're interviewing you, it's for a reason, and don't assume you know what that is either. Ask the right questions.
Ask the right questions.
Ask questions.
Don't
find
assume.
out.
Yeah.
Don't assume anything. Don't assume you know. You know, people go in. We have these preconceived notions about how to answer questions,
Right.
and I think often it's when they ask a question, understand where is that question coming from?
Exactly.
Why are they asking that, and why? And even coming in with the questions first.
And you can even ask that question. I'm curious, why are you asking that question?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and you know better than I do. You took the course, but
anyway, the third thing I learned, and this is what I'm really, really good at, which is detaching from the outcome. Totally detaching the outcome. And one reason I'm really good at that is as I get older, I keep forgetting what the outcome is. So it's easy to detach. You can't remember what it was. But anyway,
yeah, that's great.
But if they think you're totally married to the deal, but you have to have this deal, you start doing this. And this never works in negotiation. This is where this is called needs. This is called positional negotiation. It's inefficient, doesn't work. People get mad and angry, and egos flare up, and it just doesn't work.
And tell me this. I've had this conversation with a lot of real estate agents that in our experiences negotiating, that I think oftentimes a lot of negotiating might happen in the courtroom where somebody's in that courtroom because they have to be,
right,
and they're counting on an outside party to make the decision of what the result's going to be. So it's a little bit of a fight or a little bit of a win-lose mindset. And in real estate, the seller doesn't have to sell. I mean, in some situations, it might be in their best interest.
Right.
And the buyer doesn't have to buy. So and I think so often and it goes back to your thing about assuming, be careful not to assume what the other party wants, because there can be collaborations that are better than any compromise.
Exactly. So find out what their needs are, and then negotiate around that and keep bringing them back to their motivation and their needs. But detach from the outcome. The more you take the deal away, the more they want to do it. You know, what's your commission? It's blank. Well, I'm not paying that much. Great. Well, it's been nice talking to you. If you change your mind, let me know. You get up and leave, and they chase you out of the driveway and have you come back in.
Because they're obviously missing something.
Yeah, detach from the outcome.
Hey everybody, it's the Jere Metcalf podcast where top real estate agents tell how they do it. And today we have Bill Fandel. He's from the Telluride office and Sotheby's International Realty. He is one of the top luxury real estate agents in the world. He's been recognized by the Wall Street Journal. He's been recognized by the LA Times. He's a frequent guest on the global networking, oh my gosh, I'm forgetting what I'm saying, but on the global networking event for Sotheby's International Realty. He's been named number 13 in Colorado. He's been named top 38 in the country. I mean, the awards and recognitions go on and on for this guy. So really excited to talk to you today, Bill, and tell us a little bit about how you got into the business in the first place.
Well, nice to be here with you, Jere. I feel fortunate to join the ranks of the people you've hosted here already and the host yourself. So how did I get started in the business? Well, I grew up in New England. I'm based in Telluride, Colorado, but I grew up in New England where I was raised and went to school, and always had a natural curiosity about real estate. And I was a upper middle class kid, and surrounded by these grand old estates in the outlying areas of the town I grew up in. And I think that was a real point of curiosity for me. But in terms of how I actually entered the business, when I was in Telluride, one of the first real jobs I had, I got a job answering phones at a real estate office, very humble beginnings. But it got my foot in the door and gave me an appreciation what the industry looked like. And for the first several years where I really felt like I could become a luxury broker, I worked for a family on Martha's Vineyard during the summers. So I used to spend winters in Telluride, summers on Martha's Vineyard, worked for a family there, and they owned the premier brokerage on the island. And I worked at their hotel, and my job was to meet and greet people at the hotel. And I would frequently, they would ask about real estate, and I would sashay them right over to the real estate office. And I thought to myself, you know what, this is something I could do.
Yeah.
And
you kind of
you know,
were. You were making the introductions, which is such a big part of it.
Yeah. So anyway, that was the way in, and it just took off from there. One thing led to another. Marketing led to sales. Sales led to, you know, listings, et cetera, et cetera.
Wow.
But it's been a good run. I've been with Sotheby's since 2001. So I've been with the Sotheby's International Realty brand for a long time, and it's a big part of my business that we'll be discussing today.
Wow, that's huge. So what was your career before real estate? Because obviously did you start in real estate, or did you have a career before real estate?
You know, I went, you know, I had like a lot of kids. I always had jobs growing up, but most of them were, you know, odd jobs up through college. And I started out in the lodging side, hotels and lodging.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, that first real estate job where I was answering phones, I was 23 years old. So prior to that, I worked at golf courses, cutting greens.
Wow.
I worked driving a shuttle. I always had jobs and always made money, but it was my first professional job, I would say.
Wow.
That's
incredible.
So I've been in the business pretty much my entire
And
profession.
so you joined Sotheby's International Realty in 2001. When did you actually start your real estate career?
Let's see, 2001. I got my first job, as I said, at 23, so that'd be 27 years ago. I was with a company that ultimately morphed into the Sotheby's International Realty firm here. But really, the big break I got, I was hired by a development company to handle their marketing, the marketing of this new project that had never been taken on. It was the first private residence club in the United States, which subsequently Ritz-Carlton adopted in Four Seasons. And I was given a job to, you know, generate clients for them.
Mm-hmm.
And we were incredibly successful in that venture. And as part of that, they paid for me to go get my broker's license. In the state of Colorado, everyone is a broker. We don't have agency. Everybody's a broker. So that was a big plus, you know, to get that paid for and get the support. And so I went to work for that project subsequently as a on-site broker. And it was a great start for me.
Huge experience. And how many did you do that until 2001 when you joined Sotheby's?
Yeah, well, that project led to another project where I was the on-site sales agent, which you're familiar with. I think you sold vacant land for builders.
Yes.
If I remember.
Good memory. So that's how I started. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was working for these developers, you know, as they were launching these new projects in Telluride. I'd be the on-site broker. So I'd have my sales office on-site, meet and greet. And it was I frequently encourage new agents as if they want to get a start in the business, because the client, you know, the developers are paying for the marketing, mm-hmm. and they're generating clientele. And it also gives you a chance to get in front of people and talk to a lot of people and learn a lot about questions and answers in the sales process.
Exactly.
So I went through 3 or 4 different projects. And then finally, I had a big enough database where clients were asking me to market their properties outside of those, outside of the subject, you know, projects that I was working on. Mm-hmm. And so it kind of morphed into its own thing.
Wow. And so do you think that happened around 2001, or when did that go down?
Yeah, that was late 90s.
Okay.
I think my last project I worked on was 2001. And I've still taken on large projects throughout the course of my career as their listing broker, mm-hmm. But never been on an on-site sales team again. You know, it was a great experience, and it certainly made me very familiar with how to do that well. But I think it also helped me understand the selling process in the more traditional listing and selling, you know, model.
And the marketing and what marketing works, because these guys are paying for it. It's got to work.
Yeah, they had huge budgets. Which were fun to play with. But at the same time, what is proven out over the course of time is, you know, hyper-targeted initiatives mm-hmm. always work.
Wow, that's key. I love what you just said. Hyper targeted initiatives for us as listing agents of resale to keep in mind is not to be quite so broad, but targeted and make sure our money's going somewhere and closing deals and making money. So when you went from on-site to kind of resell or working more independently, did that kind of parallel with your transition into Sotheby's International Realty, or with you another brokerage before that?
Well,
where you were working
I was with a
independently?
very successful brokerage within the company, but I was big on branding. And the owner of our firm at the time didn't really understand that as well. You know, he was much more focused on different models of client generation. I was very important as this market, as the ski resort markets became more and more sophisticated. I knew that we had to grow our business with the clients. You know, the clients were becoming ever more sophisticated. What they expected in terms of marketing was more sophisticated. And when I was growing up in New England, interestingly enough, I went to a boys' school, a Jesuit boys' school in the city. So I was around the city all the time, and I used to see the Sotheby's sign right in the center of Boston, and the Sotheby's International Realty sign. So I was familiar with the brand from my teens and 20s. And we had one of the first affiliates out here in Telluride for Sotheby's.
Wow.
And it's an interesting story in the sense that as Telluride grew, it was actually based out of Aspen. And they used to bring clients over here from Aspen to look at Telluride as an alternative. So anyways, I went to work for them in 2001, and to grow my business, very specifically, to grow my listing business, I felt the Sotheby's brand was a better fit for my clients than who I was with before.
So I'd love to talk about when you broke in, and I might know too much about you. I don't want to skip over anything important because just some of the things you've done with your business, and I'll pause for a moment and let everyone know how you and we met two ways. We met at one Sotheby's International Realty at a big conference there, and then that evolved, and we met again at an event you actually put together and brought real estate agents together with a business coach in Santa Barbara, where we all masterminded. And just incredible. And then we had tours of Ellen DeGeneres' house, another beautiful home in Santa Barbara listed. The first one was listed for $49 million, another beautiful home with a view and a pool on the market for $29 million. You took us around and showed us estates, but really digging deep and into the Sotheby's brand. But that's how we met. But I want to go kind of a little bit before that. When you went into Sotheby's, I'd like to hear about, we've talked about how you were in Telluride, you're in the market, but you were a little bit isolated there. So rather than sit around and wait for the business, you went and got it. But elaborate onto this, or maybe the question I would ask you if I didn't know that answer would be, what is your best lead generating tool, or how do you generate business in Telluride?
Well, that's a good segue, because for those listening who don't know where Telluride is, it's an isolated ski resort. It's very dramatic setting, but it's, even today, after it's evolved, it still is over 40 miles from the nearest stoplight. So it's isolated in the San Juan Mountains southwest of Aspen, and it's known. It kind of grew as a ski resort and has become a year-round resort. Very small, very high-end place. So I came here in my 20s. But in terms of growing the business, I always knew, these clients were coming from all over the world, but we had these distinctively long off seasons where, 7 months, 8 months of the year, it could be quiet here. So I've learned early on, in addition to the marketing I was doing on the ground here, that I had to take my show on the road. So beginning in the kind of mid 2000s, I would say, I began to travel to the feeder markets where I knew at any given moment the demographic that was feeding the business here was based out of. For example, Dallas, Houston, New York, Boston, San Francisco. Markets where consistently we had clientele coming here and buying homes. My own road show where I went to each of these locations. I would contact the managing broker in advance of my arrival, and I would go and make presentations at the Sotheby's offices during their sales meetings on Telluride. And it was a way to not only make my own name synonymous with the Sotheby's international brand, but also with Telluride in terms of a location. And I tried to focus on, look, we're real estate agents and brokers. We have a notoriously short attention span. Very dynamic presentation visually, and then become the go-to for clients, for those agents out of those offices. And that was a big consciousness raising effort on my own part. It's kind of guerrilla marketing, but it's become a huge part of my business in terms of referrals, both coming in to my business here, people like yourself who have a client, but also going the other direction where clients realizes that I have these contacts everywhere, and who might be the best person that can help me in Buckhead, or who can be the person who can help me in Highland Park in Texas. So
exactly.
That was a big part of the business.
That's huge. I mean, but when you listen, the effort and time it took to go and travel around the country to do that's huge. But on the flip side of that, it's like, don't sit around and wait for it to come to you. And there's so many different things that you can do. And I would love, so on the one end, you're going out and getting business and recruiting it back into Telluride. But even within that Telluride market, you are so synonymous with, you're branded yourself, but you've also aligned yourself with the Sotheby's brand. And I think I've heard you say again and again, make yourself synonymous with the Sotheby's brand. When your sphere thinks about Sotheby's, they think about Bill Fandel in Telluride.
Absolutely.
And even in general.
In fairness to the there's a lot of good. We have a small town, so just to give you a sense of how competitive it is here, there's 2,800 year-round residents in Telluride,
Very small
and there's
city.
nearly 200 real estate agents.
Wow.
So it's an intense little Shark Tank here.
Yeah.
So it's about doing the things that separate yourself and elevating yourself relative to your peers. And I had the flexibility in my schedule to do that. But it was very important, especially as I began to realize in those early 2000s, it was the rising tide of mass affluence, that began in the 80s. You were now having people with 3, 4, and 5 homes. So Sotheby's was a name familiar to them, whether they were in Greenwich, Connecticut, Palm Beach, out in Santa Barbara, Montecito. That was a familiar brand to them. So when they were landing here in Telluride, and they were looking to select a real estate broker to represent them, you wanted to be that person that was, that was one and the same with that brand that they already felt comfortable with. So it was very important through print marketing and digital marketing to make sure that your presence and the way you represented properties aligned with their expectations of Sotheby's.
Which you've done a beautiful job of, by the way. So tell us about, because the next question I was going to say, in such a competitive market where over 10% of the people in the population are licensed real estate agents, what do you, which I already know the answer, but tell us, and we're already going there, but what do you do, or tell us about this magazine is really where I'm going with us. But and other things too, to stand out above that competition?
Well, that is an important consideration. I think a lot of people who are in the business, one of the challenges I faced when I got into the industry here was that a lot of people had moved here. I mean, they were in the real estate industry, and many of us faced this battle. They were in the real estate industry when I was in kindergarten, and they helped build this resort, and they were very established. So my biggest competitors were already in the game. And people were like, there's not even enough room. There's no room for any more real estate professionals around here. So I knew I needed to do something different. So I always focused on quality. Imagery was critical for me. I knew that, before there was digital imagery, you had to pay a lot more for it. But I wanted to make sure that every single thing that left our office was high quality, and that people, when we were representing their property, it was how they saw their property. Agents were notorious at that time for, just driving by a property and snapping a photo, and, they'd bring it online sometimes with no photos, sometimes with 2 or 3. I always felt it was important to position. But one of the things, getting back to what you were leading up to, was I always spent I committed a portion of what I earned from any sale to marketing. And I kept rolling money back into marketing in a way that probably would have been tougher for a lot of my competitors with growing family or something. But I was able to do that because of my age, and I was single at the time. And I was able to, what I decided was I need something to separate me even more. So I created my own dedicated magazine. Everybody else was putting ads in individual magazines and competing with each other within that magazine. So I figured I'm going to create my own proprietary magazine that features, what I see the market as, and the quality of imagery and the look and the feel and the statistics, and then I think things that were engaging. And so I would say I'm probably on maybe the 25th volume of that magazine. But what I did was create a multi-page. It's now up to about 52 pages, and I distributed it as an insert within the local newspaper, as opposed to a lot of places where people began pulling away from print. I leaned into it, created this magazine, put it as an insert every Friday and Saturday in our paper, and it was a takeaway. And I mean, it was much to the chagrin. My competitors hated it. They still hate it.
I love to hear you talk about it.
And
yeah, it's
because
awesome.
people literally will walk into our office and say, I want to be in this magazine. You don't know me. I own this big house. I would like to be in this magazine of yours. So it became a lead generation source. It became a branding, a statement of our brand. And it really did make it very difficult for a lot of my competitors to be recognized with Sotheby's in the same with the same level of effectiveness as I've been able to.
That's huge. That's huge. And so, how many years have you been? What year did you start that magazine?
Yeah, I would say it was probably 12, 13 years ago. As I said, we're at 25 volumes. So I print anywhere between 30 and 50,000 of those twice annually. So somewhere between 60 and 100,000 of those go in as either inserts to the paper off racks in front of our office, or direct mailed to agents or clients. And then we have a digital version that we post on, social media. But it's been particularly powerful. And, I think you need to look for those opportunities, I think, in your business where you can own a space, where you own the vehicle in which people get that information. And, candidly, I refer to it as kind of an arms race. I don't need to compete with the 200. There's only 5 or 6 people who are going to even hope to compete with me in terms of that expense. So then they have to be motivated to do it. And
well, it's not just an expense; it's a time and effort and creativity and process.
And it's a passion. Well, Ellen Williamson, who's here in the office, she's my marketing director. She does an incredible job with that. And the two of us both love the creative side. I think that's a big part of it too. It fulfills a creative bent in each of us that we really like to make it better and better. I always say, make sure each thing that leaves your office is better than the last.
Exactly.
So you really want things to look good,
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you do some really, really heavy just really big number of transactions. As far as your volume, you've got I think you've broken some records on sales prices of homes and properties you've sold and things like that. So elaborate on that. As real estate agents, everybody wants to be a luxury real estate agent, and then you get into it and you realize a lot of these properties take a lot of time, money, and effort to sell. What is the difference, or what is it that you did that there's so many people that have tried to break into that market and they really just kind of gave up or realized it's a lot more than it takes? What's the difference between you and what you've done as far as the actions you've taken, and then how you've actually leveraged that action to create success and create sales? If that question makes sense. I'm kind of trying to ask you too many at once, but yeah.
Well, I made some conscious decisions when I was, and this kind of is something you asked me before we jumped online about, did you ever make a mistake that turned into something else? I don't know if it was a mistake, but I made a conscious decision years ago when I was just getting going. I started being offered these listings that were kind of in our market were, under $1 million, which is, is the lower end of our market. and I turned them down. And I remember somebody saying, some guy, an older guy, lectured me like, you shouldn't do that. You should never turn down a piece of business. And I thought to myself, well, I don't want to be typecast with this. I know what I want. I know what I want my business to look like. I had seen in other markets, even before luxury became, this huge space that people, had populated. I wanted to always represent the top tier of the market, the highest quality things, the best quality clients, and I was willing to spend my own money to do it. And I was willing to work harder and longer and be much more dedicated to insights that maybe my peers didn't do. So I think focusing, knowing what you want in terms of your career, modeling yourself. And this is a very important thing, given what you're doing with these podcasts. I always knew who the big brokers were around the United States. And so I watched what they were doing in my 20s and early 30s. I was like, oh, look at that person and that person. I always knew them, even in advance of meeting them. And I knew what I wanted my business to look like. And I think if you kind of have it in the back of your head, things begin, we have a way of self-actualizing, and these things came about. In terms of the nuts and bolts of it, though, I dedicated a lot of resources. I've spent a lot of money over the years, certainly more than my peers, on imagery, on video, I write my own narrative, but I'm very careful about how a property is represented and positioned. I don't take properties that I think cheapen the portfolio I have. I don't take things unless they're a referral. I'm very wary about the clients I represent. And that's not, listen, I don't mean to sound cocky in that way, more that I'm just trying to be judicious. I'm trying to say, I want to represent the best of the best, and I don't want to be dragged down by anything that might affect.
And you're creating that environment. You're creating that environment for yourself and for those clients, and like attracts like. Last question. For everyone listening to this, if there's one thing that you want us to take from this interview, what would that be?
That's a great question. I would say find that part of the business that really resonates with you emotionally. For example, for me, it's the creative and the marketing side of it. And play to your strengths and hire to your weaknesses.
Play to your strengths and hire to your weaknesses. Love that. Yeah.
I would say that's it. I'm never going to get any awards for math or physics, but I
do for creativity and relationships. Now you finish the statement. I'm finishing it for you. Go ahead.
What was that?
I said, I was finishing the statement. You said, I won't get any rewards for mathematics, or I forgot what the other one was. And then I finished it for you in physics. And then I said, but you would for relationship building and creativity.
Yeah. Well, that's it. And don't sit, get out in the world and go meet people. Sitting on the end of the dock waiting for a fish to come swim up to your line is not the future of this business. And it's certainly not. It's going to make you highly replaceable in a world where technology is shifting underneath our feet.
Awesome. So well said. Bill, thank you so much. This has been awesome having you.
Great to talk to you, Jere.
Talk to you soon.
Appreciate it. And looking forward to seeing you soon. And best to everybody out there.
See you soon.